What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video. Today I'm giving you an updated NFL power rankings. It's been 3 weeks. There's a lot of movement in this, but work has finally calmed down and I am hopefully getting back to where I can post multiple videos in a week. So with all that said, I'm here to give you my week 12 power rankings. Tell me what you think down in the comment section. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Who's your favorite team? Where do you think they fit in the mix? Hopefully you will enjoy today's video. If you do, hit that like button. It really would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, like what you see, want to see more of it, hit that big red subscribe button. Well, let's just go ahead and jump right into it again. Keep in mind there's been a whole lot of movement because it's been a 3-week hiatus, but I'm playing some catch up. But this is it's a fun NFL we got on our hands right now. Lions without a win, and they got the tie against the Steelers and Mason Rudolph. But other than that, it's been a tough year in a lot of ways, especially down the stretch for the Lions. The Jags, they just still feel like they have something in their way. You could probably point to the coaching staff and say, not having somebody work with them as opposed to they're working against him in a lot of ways. It feels like holding back Trevor Lawrence, and we'll see. It feels like that coaching staff with every day that goes by becomes more and more likely to more and more certain to not have a job at the end of this year. But a lot of football left to be played. Jets coming in at number 30. When I last did this, it was right after the Mike White win against Cincinnati, and maybe I was sipping the Kool-Aid a little strong. And Mike White did look good the nenext Thursday night before he got hurt, but if this Jets team's willing to roll out Joe Flacco because they're scared of Mike White against the blitz, that's not a good sign. And Joe Flacco, surprisingly enough, didn't look good. Who could have thought that? Anyways, Jets are at 30. Texans get a win this week, and I know it's against a very thinned out Titans team minus all their dudes essentially because A.J. Brown was in and out of this week's game. But hey, they got the job done, and this team, compared to at least the Jags and in some regards the Jets, they do feel like they are making some progress with some of their young players, and they're getting better week over week. We'll see what that means for David Culley at the end of the year. That's kind of an interesting realm that we find ourselves in now. Giants are number 28. This team just, what a disappointment. I thought this team legitimately had a pathway to try to win that division, but the offensive line has just been very bad, and it has made Daniel Jones' life harder. They got obliterated last night on Monday Night Football. Just not a good look for the Giants overall this season. And maybe if they fix up that offensive line, maybe then you'll be able to see Daniel Jones be able to spread it around and hopefully have healthy wide receivers. That's also obviously been a big problem this year for the Giants. Chicago comes in at number 27. Obviously a weird game this week with, everything that was going on with Lamar Jackson. It kind of moves the betting line a ton. And then Justin Fields gets hurt in this game. So, it's a battle of the backups, Tyler Huntley and Andy Dalton. And they still couldn't win. If you can't beat Tyler Huntley, that signals a lot of things are wrong there. Especially with coming into the year, there was the big push from Matt Nagy and some Bears fans, I'm sure, saying that Andy Dalton gives them a better chance to win right now. But if Andy Dalton can't beat Tyler Huntley, then that's a problem. And this Bears defense is getting older, right? Allen Robinson has just vanished. Darnell Mooney does look good, though, which is a good sign. Good to have David Montgomery back and healthy. But all that to say, this team has a lot of work on the horizon in the next couple of off seasons, trying to get this team to work and compete with Justin Fields. Falcons, funny enough, stay put here. They've had a couple of weird weeks, right? So in my hiatus, they've had some wins that have boosted up their public perception, and then they get blanked on Thursday Night Football against the Pats, and then it's now right back to where I've always thought Atlanta was, a bottom quarter of the league team. Just the offensive line's not good, and especially now, no Calvin Ridley. Cordero Patterson was hurt Thursday. Kyle Pitts is a stud, but there's only so much you can do with one playmaker in the NFL. That's what makes the Devontae Adams and Green Bay thing so rare and hard to comprehend. Is in the modern NFL, you just can't get by with just one playmaker, and that's what the Falcons try to do. And that defense, while AJ Terrell's been pretty good, and Deion Jones is solid, Grady Jarrett's obviously a fantastic player, it's just still not a great defense, right? So they're going to get picked apart, and especially when you have no help from your offense, 25-0 feels like an outcome that plays to how weak their team is, so if that makes sense. But anyways, Falcons at 25. Falcons at 26. Washington football team, number 25. Up 3 spots. Gotten a couple of wins, right? Yeah, upset Tampa Bay, and then I was a little surprised with the Carolina outcome as well. The defense is played better. The secondary is still a bit of an issue, and it feels like they're a rangy safety away. Maybe when an updated mock draft comes out, maybe Kyle Hamilton is someone who comes to mind as a good fit there. We'll see. Spoiler alert there. But, this past weekend got the high end of the variance for Taylor Heineke. That is the best. Now, I do worry about this upcoming week for Washington. It feels like he might come crashing down to earth. But, hey, 6 incompletions, 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's as good as it's going to get for Heineke. And it made a big difference, right? 6-point win. And sometimes it just makes sense. Hey, I got Terry McLaurin. He's an all-world wide receiver. Let me just chuck it in his direction and see what he can do. So that seemed to be a positive recipe for success this past week for Washington. On to number 24, the Miami Dolphins. Been playing some better football of late. The defense is starting to improve, and I think we're starting to get back to that point where everybody likes Brian Flores, right? I think we all need to acknowledge he is a good coach, especially on the defensive side. But he's the second-year head coach, and there's some things that you have to improve upon about handling your staff, but also handling your team. So I think Tua's been playing better as well. I just think this is a better football team than where they were, a couple weeks back as a 2-win team, and a lot of power rankings have them in the bottom 4 to 5. This is too talented of a football team to be down there, even if you don't like Tua. That said, there's a lot of work to be done on that offensive line, and Will Fuller, the 1-year contract, it was great in theory. I think there was good practice there, good process, but it just hasn't worked out. So I think another playmaker next offseason could go a long way as well to help this team out. But I think this team is in an okay spot. I really wouldn't fire Flores and burn the whole thing down. You go out there and get Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson this upcoming offseason, there's your quarterback problem aside. Patch up the offensive line with some veterans and some mid-round picks, and you're right there in the thick of it, and you might be the best team in the AFC East. Who knows? Seattle Seahawks coming in at number 23, down 3 spots from when I last did these, and that's with Russ coming back. But, man, it's just not looked good the last couple of weeks, so I'm thinking he's not 100% from the Mala finger, and even if he is, man, I think it also signals how bad that roster really is, right? Like, Dwayne Brown's starting to regress, so the offensive line isn't very good. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, fantastic, but if you're taking pressure as quick as Russell Wilson has sometimes, it's hard to get them the ball. And also, the offense, I really am kind of disappointed with what that offense has looked like with Shane Waldron. It just has not looked any different. And it hasn't looked like a McVay tree or McVay offense at all. So that's really disappointing. And I felt like they could have tapped into more of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett over the middle of the field, those backside digs, and just trying to work the 10 to 20 yard part of the field a little bit more. But hasn't happened, and Gerald Everett could also be someone who works in that area as well. But that point aside, the Seattle team is rough, especially on the defensive side, right? Like, you have Jamal Adams, and he's had a bad year in a lot of ways. Bobby Wagner continues to play great, but what can one middle linebacker do for you? They have a hard time generating pass rush. The secondary isn't very good. It's just tough to win football games that way. Broncos are staying at number 22. This feels like this Denver team is just destined to be at number 22 forever. I think they've been here for the past couple of power rankings I've done, but this feels about right? Like the defense, even without Von Miller, is fine. It's good. There's some pieces there. It's not as good as it is with Von Miller, but it's still a solid unit overall. It's not terrible, and some weeks Teddy Bridgewater is going to give you some good play, and there's going to be some weeks where he's uber conservative, and then there's going to be some weeks where he's bad. Like, it's just there's those 3 true outcomes for Teddy Bridgewater, but more often than not, it's there in the middle, and then every once in a while you get the polar ends of it, and that's how the offense goes, right? It's really interesting to see him just pay Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton. I think they got him at good market value for each of those players as well, so intriguing by that. Now we can start talking offseason, which is, I love team building, so I'm excited to get to that point of the year. But definitely feels like this team's trying to lure, a big name quarterback to head to Denver this offseason. And hey, if they're successful, this is one of the best teams at football. The only thing that might worry your quarterback is that division, right? Like, do I want to go play Patrick Mahomes twice a year, Justin Herbert, and the ascending Chargers? And even if the Raiders don't make any changes, they're, middle of the pack or so squad. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Speaking of the Raiders, they're down 12 spots. When I last did these power rankings, it was them overcoming the John Gruden, situation, and then the Henry Ruggs news breaks, and the secondary hasn't been playing as well, and Derek Carr's regressed a little bit, and it feels like there's just a lot going on that's working against the Raiders, right? Like, everything that could go wrong this year has, and it sucks because this Raiders team was pretty fun to root for because they were that surprising team. Like, we didn't anticipate the Raiders to be as good as they were to start the season, but despite Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue still playing well, Casey Hayward has taken a step back. He's still playing good, but he, at the beginning of the year, he was arguably the best cornerback on-field production-wise. Nate Hobbs has still been fantastic, but then, that second outside corner has been an issue, and Jonathan Abram has a target on his back. Wherever he's defending, that's where the ball is going, it feels like. And then on the offensive side, they can't run the ball. The offensive line can't hold up, so a lot of pressure in Derek Carr's face. And, they just don't have a true separator. Darren Waller is, and he's great in a lot of ways, but besides Waller, that's just not who Bryan Edwards is. And Hunter Renfrow, he's a good separator, I guess, but he does so within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, right? Like, he's not a big play down the field, take the top off the defense. And we haven't seen a lot of Deshaun Jackson, so it just it's tough. This Raiders team, in a lot of ways, just isn't who they were the first 3, 4, 5 weeks of the NFL season. Philadelphia Eagles, big riser since my last one. Well, I say big, it's only 3 spots, but I'm starting to like this team a whole lot more. And, Jalen Hurts is giving you that high floor where he's solid, he's dependable, he's nothing flashy, but because of his running ability, he forces opposing defenses to play honest, and he can do a lot with that. And he's made some throws, right? Like he had the big game with Devonta Smith a couple weeks back, and he threw some dimes in there, right? So every once in a while, it feels like one throw a week minimum. He gives you one throw a week where you're like, okay, well, that was actually kind of impressive. And then the rest of it is just kind of muddled and it's middle of the pack at best. But then he also has rushing ability. So that's all like something you can work with. So given the QB class this upcoming year isn't all that great, this feels like a spot where Philadelphia, if they're going to take a quarterback, it's probably going to be with the last of those 3 first-round picks they're lining up to have. Or they just use all 3 to try to go get their hands on, Russell Wilson or something like that. Or they just build around Jalen Hurts and then, kick the can. Maybe in 2023 they'll be able to get a veteran or a future franchise quarterback in the draft then. We'll see. But, Hurts has been solid, and the defense is playing really well. Darius Slay, how about the play he's had over the past couple of weeks? That guy's starting to get back into that top 5 to 8 cornerback conversation, and that's kind of surprising given his age. So he's been great, and it's boosted up that secondary a ton. And then they still have some veterans and some young players like Josh Sweat, who are great at getting the quarterback, right? And that makes it all a lot easier. So with a good rushing attack and then good pass rush, this defense is, stabilized, and overall this team has stabilized. And I think they're doing a pretty good job. Shout out to Nick Sirianni. I think he's done a good job over the past couple of weeks as this team is trying to figure out who it is. Pittsburgh Steelers down 3 spots at number 19. You tie the Lions a couple weeks ago, and you battle with the Chargers. I don't want to discredit what Big Ben did. He had some good throws, and Deontay Johnson makes some freak plays. Claypool had some moments, but that guy's always hobbled and injured. Unfortunately, him and Mike Evans feel like every play they come up a little lame after they get tackled. But this Pittsburgh team is just still a mess. This is a 19th type of team in the power rankings, right? Like, they still don't run the ball well, even though we all acknowledge Najee Harris is a good football player. Big Ben, even when he has moments, we all acknowledge he's just not that good anymore. Like, he's not the Big Ben of old. And they have great playmakers, but what good does that do you if you have, below average at best quarterback? And then on the defensive side, it was tough this week. No TJ Watt, no Joe Hayden, no Mika Fitzpatrick. You're probably your 3 best defensive players. Well, 3 of the 4. Cam Hayward was a monster in this game, and he proved that he's definitely in that conversation. But also, no Stephon Tuitt, right? So, like, a lot of injuries, a lot of names out, and that makes it obviously a lot harder to try to slow down Justin Herbert and a offense that has weapons, despite the scheme and Joe Lombardi trying to hold the Chargers back. That offense is still going to put up points, and some Steelers busted coverages late, including the Mike Williams big play touchdown at the end. That's what happens when you have a bunch of backups out there, and you're not having TJ Watt make big plays down the stretch. You're not having Minka all over the field trying to, slow down Herbert and that passing attack. So tough look there for Pittsburgh, but this is just not a very good team, right? So they're gritty. They have a lot of veteran leadership. They have a lot of experience. They have a great head coach. So they win a lot of close games, and they win games they shouldn't. But overall, the ceiling is capped given the restrictions that this team battles with a bad offensive line, not a whole lot of depth, and a pretty weak secondary, even when it is healthy. Carolina Panthers technically up a spot, but that mostly becomes as a result of their win last week against Arizona. That was really impressive. I know it's against Colt McCoy, but hey, look, the Cardinals have looked okay the other 2 weeks. It was just that middle game for McCoy where he didn't look so good. It is the return of Cam, too. So there's some emotional aspect to that. Cam didn't look all that good down the stretch against Washington this past Sunday. Came out hot, but after that, definitely cooled down quite a bit. But I think this Carolina team, again, 18 feels about right. They have a really good defense, and there's going to be weeks where the offense, especially with Cam, right? Over the past couple of years in Carolina, it's a roller coaster. He gives you some good games. He gives you a string of bad games. And then he finds a good one, and he's back to, bad. Now, I think it's a little disappointing he hasn't played all that great out to start. That felt like a Cam characteristic, right? He'd play really good the first 4, 5, 6 weeks in a year, and then things start to take a step back. So considering this past Sunday he didn't look all that good down the stretch, it feels like maybe that hot start isn't quite as large as it normally is for Cam. But that said, he gives you a better baseline and a better floor than Sam Darnold ever could in a lot of ways. And then Christian McCaffrey is back. That's a big plus. And I feel a little bit better about Cam being able to get the ball to DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson than Sam Darnold or PJ Walker for that matter. And this defense is really good, and it's well coached by Phil Snow. So the weeks where they can put up enough points, like if they can get that race to 20, if Carolina gets 20, 25 points on the board, they should be feeling pretty good that they can beat whoever they're lined up against. Cleveland Browns are staying at number 17. This is such a weird team. It took what felt like so much effort for a 3-point win against something called a Tim Boyle and the Detroit Lions. I have no idea why this team makes it so hard on itself. I think the biggest chieftain out of this week is Baker Mayfield is just not good when he's not healthy, right? So they might be better served just letting Case Keenum take over the next couple of weeks and try to get Baker fully healthy, and then maybe you make that late season push into the playoffs and then get hot at the right time. I don't know, but leaving them out there just is not pretty, and it does not do this team any justice, right? It doesn't make them any better. So that's a struggle, and what's also disappointing about that is it feels like Baker Mayfield and this quarterback plays a bigger role in the offense of the last couple of weeks. It felt like, a few weeks ago, even when we did see Case Keenum, it was, a run-first team, and that was the talk. But the last couple of weeks, maybe it's Cleveland trying to see what they have at Baker Mayfield, but it feels like they have been putting the ball in his hands more, and it just makes him as a problem become that much more evident and clear to see. So, I don't know. That in itself is a little weird, but I trust Kevin Stefanski to try to even that out. But I don't know. This Cleveland team with a hurt quarterback certainly ain't all that good, despite like the rest of the roster. I mean, really, it comes down to Baker Mayfield. This team's going to go as the quarterback position goes, which obviously, it's the NFL. On to the top half of these power rankings, the New Orleans Saints are down 9 spots, and obviously during this duration of my break, Jameis Winston goes down, so Trevor Siemian hasn't looked terrible, but then he didn't look all that good this past week, right? This was kind of like the crashing to earth type of moment. He had some weird decisions in this game and tried to throw some picks, it felt like. But this Saints team, when it is healthy, right, like that's also a big thing that's holding them back is, no Alvin Kamara this past week and no Ryan Ramczyk, no Teron Armstead. When this team is healthy, they say we'll have enough pieces around Simeon to make him not look terrible, especially on the defensive side. Still like that group overall, but Trevor Siemian certainly is a big way of being a ceiling for what this team's potential could have been, maybe with Jameis, because sometimes he gives you that high variance play. You're just not going to get that from Trevor Siemian. 49ers, they're down 3 spots, which is kind of weird. I don't know, maybe I was a little too high on them to start, but over the last couple of weeks, they've looked as good as they have all year. So I might have them a little too low now, but I don't know. This is definitely a team that feels like they could be getting hot at the right moment. They're making it work, even if it's not, their normal starting running back tandem, right? Like getting done with Jeff Wilson and Trey Sermon this past week. And Jimmy Garoppolo has been playing a lot better football. And honestly, their lead running back in a lot of ways has been Deebo Samuel. He's just been their lead playmaker, right? Anytime they need something to happen, they get the ball to Deebo Samuel, line him up in the backfield, they get him on a jet sweep, they'll get the ball to him short. It's been the Deebo Samuel show on the offensive side. Now, for this team to climb up even more than 15, I think they need some more elements to that offense. Maybe it's Elijah Mitchell in that zone stretch run game, and maybe it's adding Trey Lance more to the playbook. We'll see. But if this team does make the playoffs, Deebo Samuel will not be enough. I promise you. They will get bounced in the first round because the team will key in on it in that big of a stage, and then this team will be left a little, head scratched trying to figure out what they can do on offense. Minnesota up 4 spots. This is like a team that should be so much better than their record is, but they get passive at all the wrong times, right? Mike Zimmer, in a lot of ways, has done a fantastic job coaching that defense. I have no idea. You look at the names on the paper, especially with Danielle Hunter hurt, outside of Eric Kendricks, and then you could lump Anthony Barr, but he's not nearly as good as Kendricks. There's just not a lot to work with on that defensive side, but Mike Zimmer's done a fantastic job finding ways to minimize how bad that secondary is. They've found enough ways to generate some pass rush now. I know they gave up 31 this past week to Green Bay, but could have been a whole lot worse since Green Bay. It's one of the best offenses in football. Whatever. And you won, so, whatever then, times 2. But I think Mike Zimmer, in a lot of ways, has done such a good job of the defense. It's going to get to a weird spot where Minnesota has to contemplate keeping him at the end of the year or letting him go and risk, that defense regressing. But if you keep him, like, is that offense going to continue to be passive in such big moments, right? I think back to that Sunday night game against Cooper Rush, right? Like, down the stretch, that team just didn't take enough shots. But I say that this past week, the MO was get the ball to Justin Jefferson, pick on Eric Stokes, and that they did. It wasn't even great Kirk Cousins, despite, the box score looks fantastic, but, like throw for throw and some of the decision-making wasn't fantastic. He did put the ball in harm's way, especially late, right? Like, the Darnell Savage play has been kind of like the talk of this game after its conclusion. But, good on this team. They took the Green Bay route of trying to force feed Devontae Adams. They just did it with Justin Jefferson, and good things happen when you get the ball to Justin Jefferson, right? So Minnesota with a big win there over Green Bay in the division rival, so they're going to guaranteed split that series, which goes a long way for this team to try to make the playoffs. Cincinnati Bengals are at number 13. I'm not in love with the defense, though it did look a whole lot better this past week. They got enough pressure against Derek Carr, but I think that's more of, I think the Raiders are falling off compared to, I think the Bengals defense has figured it back out, but I think that unit is fine, and I think Zach Taylor has cooled off a little bit. I think the positive buzz around him has started to simmer, but he's fine. The real success is going to come with the playmakers, right? Joe Mixon had a big game against the Raiders, but Joe Burrow can pop off at any moment, and Jamar Chase is good for a few big plays, it feels like, at any moment. And then Tyler Boyd, solid, but he's the third guy and he feels a little overshadowed, but it's Tyler Boyd. He's one of the best slot wide receivers in football. T. Higgins is a good up-and-coming young wide receiver, so they go as the offensive playmakers go, right? And if the offense gets stagnant, well, then this team's in trouble. But if they are rolling and they're clicking, they got momentum, this team could go toe-to-toe with just about anybody on the offensive side. So because of that, they'll be in a lot of games, but there's also going to be some ugly ones along the way, right? Like there's going to be those weeks where the offense doesn't look good and this team doesn't look good in turn. Colts, one of the biggest risers, and give all the credit in the world. The past couple of weeks, they have been able to dictate the game flow and make the game play into their favor, right? This past week is the perfect example of that. That I felt very confident. I threw money on the Colts. I felt really good about how that defense matched up against Josh Allen, playing that too high, forcing him to check the ball down or make bad decisions, and Josh Allen made a lot of bad decisions this past week. But that Colts defense, especially in those too high looks, they rotate well between 2-4-6, and they cause a lot of confusion there. A lot of credit there to Matt Eberflus, and he's getting a lot out of a group that really isn't all that good. If you look at the names on paper, it's not like an unbelievable defense. In a lot of ways, you could look at a team like Washington who has more talent, but the Colts have been better coached, and the scheme is just a lot better, and it fits what the modern NFL is moving towards. And, it's now we're in a spot where the next great, offensive mind, the next Kyle Shanahan, the next Sean McVay is going to be the person who figures out how to beat these too high looks, like, McVay and Shanahan have done against cover 1, cover 3, those single high looks, that defense that dominated through the Legion of Boom era and made it really tough, and its fingerprints are all over the NFL. And now it's moving to this too high look where, how do I beat Brandon Staley's defense? Okay, well, this is what you need to do on the offensive side. How do I beat Vic Fangio? Okay, well, you do this. And Matt Eberflus is that same group, right? How do you beat that cover 2-4-6 split that forces quarterbacks to play more conservative and dial back the big plays, especially when you're a guy like Josh Allen and you're dependent on it? But we don't have that person, at least not yet. So the Colts executed a perfect game plan on the defensive side against the Bills, slowed down the offense, forced Josh Allen to make bad mistakes, and then they attacked. Despite the Bills having a really good defense, statistically, the Colts did not forget who they were. They ran the football straight down Buffalo's throat. They understood that is the weakness of that defense, and it's the absolute strength of the Colts offense. Jonathan Taylor was fantastic. The offensive line was incredible. Ton of credit for Indianapolis. They made this game theirs. They made this their game script. So a ton of credit for dictating a game and putting on a dominant showing there for Indianapolis. They're in the top 12. Chargers up 3. They made it interesting there in the fourth quarter with the block punt and then the turnover on downs late against Pittsburgh. But this team is still finding ways to win close games, right? And I just like the sum of the parts. I have to think eventually they're going to stop shooting themselves in the foot and making games more interesting than they have to be. They're going to kind of break that Chargers trend, right? Even the fact the Chargers won that game against Pittsburgh, in years past, it feels like that's the exact way the Chargers choke a game against Pittsburgh. But instead, they held on, and, Justin Herbert made some big plays, made some big throws. Mike Williams breaks away. That's the go-ahead game-winning touchdown. It just comes down to what that offense is. Why is it so passive? It's okay to have short game. I talked about this in my videos this past Thursday. It's okay to have short game, but it's when that's all your offense is. despite having Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jared Cook, guys who can get down the field and be vertical options, that's where it becomes a problem. So I'm hoping to see this team break out of its shell a little bit more, and hopefully as the season goes on, Joe Lombardi starts to piece together how he can stretch the ball more down the field vertically. And also, big game from Austin Eckler. That is a welcome sign if you are a Chargers fan. He had a awesome game. Bills at 10, they're down 8 spots. That's right, they were the number 2 team last time I did these power rankings, and they have certainly had a fall from the graces. That too high defensive look has given them a lot of fit to the last couple of weeks. A lot of credit to the Jags, a lot of credit to the Colts for being able to stymie that Bills defense. 2 of the last 3 weeks, weird losses there for the Bills, more so the Jags one than the Colts one. But that aside, this offense might be in trouble, right? Unless Brian Daboll can find a way for that offense to break through against those too high looks, pull Josh Allen back, and have him play more conservative. And also it highlighted the weakness of this defense. Yes, like Buffalo was number 2 in the NFL, I think, in EPA against the run. But this team is not a good run defense, and that became very evident against the Colts. Now, granted, the Colts might have the best rushing attack in the league right now, especially with the Titans down Derrick Henry. So, that will regress based off your opponent. Like if they were to play Pittsburgh again or something like that, it wouldn't look as good. Or if they play the Chargers, it's not going to be as dominant. All that to say, though, that is still a weakness, and it could be something that comes back up once we get to the postseason. And now this team, I'm not feeling so confident, right? Like last time I did this, clearly I felt very, very positive about the Bills. Number 2 team in the league. I felt like they were the best team in the AFC. And now I'm thinking of anything else, but you'll see there's a logjam of AFC teams here, including the Chiefs at number 9. I don't think this team is fixed. The offense hasn't been that good, right? Like they picked on the Raiders, who stayed in that single high look, that cover 1, cover 3 defense, and they're great against that. We already knew that. But these too high looks continue to be something that Kansas City's offense can't overcome. And I give credit to Dan Quinn for mixing up his defense and throwing a lot of those looks at Kansas City, despite him being a cover 3 type of guy coming from that tree, especially from his time in Seattle. But that said, 19 points for Kansas City, right? Like the offense isn't fixed. The defense did put on a superhero effort, but I wouldn't count on that week to week. But it is amazing how, as the year went on, I'm not the only person to say this, a lot of people have said this, there were a lot of small tweaks this team could make on the defensive side that would make a world of difference, right? Seeing more Juan Thornhill than Dan Sorensen, seeing more of Willie Gay Jr. than Ben Neiman, and moving Chris Jones back inside. They make the trade for Melvin Ingram, and it felt like all these 1% improvements, right, have made a huge turnaround showing for that defense. And it's kind of that sum of all parts where it's just a little tweak here, a little tweak there, but that on top of Spagnuolo feels like he's back in his bag, and he's certainly coaching up that defense really well. He called a great game Sunday against the Cowboys, so a lot of credit to that defense. If that group can be competent, it makes it a lot easier for the offense to not have to be spectacular, right? And that's what we were talking about at the beginning of the year. It felt like the Chiefs were forcing and pressing the ball and forcing Mahomes to try to do too much, and that leads to the turnovers, and then it kind of the snowball effect from that point onward. So it is a positive sign. I don't think this Chiefs defense is all world and it's not the best in the league or anything like that, but it's competent, and it takes a whole lot of pressure then off the backs of the Chiefs offense. We're on to the top 8. The New England Patriots have been one of the hottest teams in the league, right? That defense looks fantastic. Mac Jones gets better week over week. He did, have that near pick on the one big play it felt like New England was trying to go through on Thursday night against the Falcons, and it wasn't great, but Mac Jones overall has gotten better and better week over week, and this rushing attack has been really solid, whether it's been Ramondre Stevenson or it's been Damian Harris. This is a team that's been able to run the football behind that offensive line, and they've gotten enough out of those playmakers. They've gotten enough out of those tight ends to where the offense hasn't looked completely lost, right? And they've been able to score enough to complement that defense that continues to be fantastic. And Bill Belichick, a lot of people have said it, this might be his most impressive coaching job of his career, which is a lot to say, but especially on the defensive side, he's done a fantastic job scheming up a lot of different advantages. He's made Justin Herbert look silly. He's made Baker Mayfield look silly, and did it again this week against Matt Ryan and really exposed the weakness of that Falcons offensive line as well. Matt Judon looked like a great signing in the offseason. He looks even better now that we get to see him play, and man, he's been a lot of fun to watch this year for the Patriots, and he's kind of given them this game wrecker edge rusher that they haven't had in a long time. So I'm feeling really good about the Patriots. I think they will settle closer to earth, but it'll be interesting. I'm really psyched to see this team play Buffalo, especially considering Bill Belichick's been still running that one high system. So, can Buffalo get big plays against this Pats defense, or does Bill Belichick change it up and give more two high looks against the Bills? We've talked a lot about that throughout this episode of these power rankings, but I'm intrigued by those matchups, and I'm really excited to see them down the line. Titans down a spot, and they might be falling a whole lot more in the weeks to come, right? We'll see about the A.J. Brown injury. It does seem like he'll be able to play this upcoming week, but Ryan Tannehill cannot do it all by himself, right? Like, he needs at least A.J. Brown out there. No Derrick Henry. If you're a Titans fan, you're hoping you can survive the postseason, then Henry can come back, and then you'll be, pretty much back to full strength, right? And Julio Jones will be back, and I think it's in 2 weeks. So that would obviously be a big plus as well. But, Julio Jones just has not been the same guy the last 3 years. He's just always hurt. So even when he's back, I'm not sure it's truly Julio coming back. But this defense, not as great this past weekend, but overall it's been a really impressive unit. Mike Vrabel's coached him up and done a fantastic job on that side of the ball. So I'm trusting the sum of what I've seen this year compared to what I saw this past week. But I'm a little worried about this Titans team, especially if A.J. Brown is out. Like, if he doesn't play next week, then definitely fade the Titans. So, remember them against the Jets, right? They lost the Jets when they didn't have A.J. Brown. They didn't have Julio Jones. And they just, didn't have enough weapons on the offensive side to win that game. So, I'm monitoring that A.J. Brown injury really closely. The Ravens are up 4 spots. And, it's one of those spots where I know they lost to Miami last week, but that felt like such a weird game, right? Like, I really don't know the perfect way to describe what happened there, other than the Dolphins came right at Baltimore with the one thing that they might not have been able to execute. Honestly, there was a play early on in that game where if Lamar Jackson makes this throw to the back of the end zone, they might be able to spook Miami out of that blitz heavy cover zero game plan. The pass fell incomplete, so the Dolphins stuck with it, and it gave the Ravens a lot of headaches. But being able to win a game against the Bears, who I know they're a little bit lower in the power rankings, but they're a solid team. They're not a joke. And being able to do that with Tyler Huntley is a positive sign. This team just finds ways to win games despite all the injuries they've had. And now for Baltimore, you hope that Lamar Jackson come back this upcoming week and be back to 100%, and then you can get back to where you were pre the Dolphins loss, where this team was feel like building toward being potentially seen as the best team in the AFC. And right now you can see it. I have them as the top team in the AFC because I like the defense. I think they come with a high floor when Lamar Jackson plays, and even when he doesn't, they're finding ways to win games. They're well coached. John Harbaugh's done a fantastic job. So I think they might be the best team in the AFC in my eyes. But I don't know. The AFC is wide open. So tell me what you think down in the comment section. I think, honestly, there's going to be a lot of people with differing opinions on who the best team in the AFC really is right now. But there is one thing I'll stand by. 5 best teams here in this power ranks are all NFC. Cowboys lost, but you lose Amari Cooper right before the game. CeeDee Lamb gets hurt in the game. Michael Gallup's good. Cedric Wilson's fine. I think he's a solid player. But you game plan thinking about having Cooper and Lamb out on the field, and when they're not, that obviously changes things. And give credit to Kansas City's defense. They had a great game plan, and Spags called a great game overall as the DC for Kansas City. And they kind of put Dallas on the ropes, right? They had them back up against the rope to finish that analogy, I guess. But this was one of the weirder games we've seen from Dallas. But again, it's one of those things like with the Titans. I'm trusting the sum of the parts where every team has that one loss you look at and you're like, that's a little strange. And for Dallas, it was a couple weeks ago, and then you could even look at this past week against Kansas City where it was just that game was a big letdown. We thought there would be so much more scoring, more offense overall, and it just wasn't there. Additionally, I know Kansas City fans, the Cowboys are ahead of the Chiefs despite the Chiefs winning this past week, but this is a big picture outlook all the way up to this point, right? I'm looking at the entire resume, the entire 11 weeks preceding this one. So, the Chiefs beat them this week, but overall, we've had a lot more worries about Kansas City than we have with Dallas. But I think Dallas will get back on track this upcoming Thursday against the Raiders. The Bucs up 4 spots. This past Monday looked a whole lot more like what we expect out of Tampa Bay. And overall, this defense got back on track, and Tom Brady looked much improved. They even ran the ball a little bit, and wasn't overpowering, but it was solid enough, and it just looked like Tampa Bay once again. So that's a welcome sign. I know they're beating up on the Giants, but sometimes you just need that get right game. Be a bully basically, and beat up on the weaker opponent, and next thing you know, the gears get rolling forward and you're back on track. So I'm liking where the Bucs are looking moving forward. Rams coming at number 3. You could flip these two. The Rams have lost 2 in a row. They had their bye week this past week, so during my hiatus has been the lowest point of their season. And losing Robert Woods doesn't help. OBJ will help fill that void, but Robert Woods is so underrated, and Robert Woods is just a better football player right now than OBJ. We'll see how OBJ looks in that offense, and wants to see him away from Baker Mayfield, and we'll see. Either it's more of the same, and he continues to be someone who just has a hard time building chemistry with the quarterback, or he might be someone who plays as good or maybe even better than Robert Woods. But to this point, over the past couple of years, Robert Woods is a better football player. So you're really just trying to supplement that hit with someone like Odell Beckham Jr. And there is some upside that it could be something that's even better. And even Cam Akers might come back down the stretch. Brad Spielberger from PFF was talking about his potential to come back very late in the year, maybe even in the playoffs. So that's, I guess, still on the table. I think this team anticipates making a late playoff push. And I know it didn't look good a couple weeks back on primetime, but once you get Von Miller fully into that defense, I think that unit gets that much better with Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. So I'm not worried about the Rams. It's been a low point, but this upcoming weekend, them against the Packers, talk about a heavyweight fight. That is it. The Packers are number 2. I know they lost to Minnesota, but those division games are always weird, especially that rivalry, right? Green Bay, Minnesota, it's one of the oldest rivalries we have in the NFL, and those are two teams that are really solid, and they go at each other every time they play. They go at one another, so it's a lot of fun to watch in that respect. But the Packers definitely had a lot of opportunities and pathways to win that game, right? We talked about the Darnell Savage, almost interception late, and he had his hands on the football a lot throughout that entire contest. But Green Bay battled, and just think about what this team would look like if it had Jair Alexander and Darius Smith just on the defense alone. Now, I know losing Elgton Jenkins is a big loss, and they're continuing to wait on when David Bakhtiari comes back, and really the idea was having both of them in the lineup, and guard Jenkins moves back to guard, or he plays right tackle, then that offensive line looks like a game-changing moment, or a unit, I should say. But now it's just like, okay, it might be a really bad unit, something that holds you back until Bakhtiari comes back. But this team has legit, big improvements just coming with players once they're healthy. Once Jair's back, once Darius Smith's back, once David Bakhtiari is healthy, this team is going to be exponentially better, and they're already one of the best teams in the league. So a lot of good things there. LaFleur continues to be one of the best coaches in football, despite nobody really putting him in that conversation. But that dude just wins, and done a good job. And Aaron Rodgers playing pretty good, especially in that second half. That man was a buzzsaw. Slow start, and that toe injury is a little concerning for sure if you're a Packers fan, but that second half, man, he looked good. And then Arizona comes in at number 1. Look, you go 2-1 with Colt McCoy, and then now you're in your bye week, and you can let DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray get fully healthy. That's impressive. I mean, there are not a lot of teams that could say that, especially with Colt McCoy. He's not necessarily one of those guys you look at as like, oh, that's a high-end backup. That's a Tyrod Taylor. That's a Jalen Hurts. Those guys that we often hear lumped into that type of conversation. Colt McCoy's not that dude. He's just a backup. And they went 2-1 with him. And that's overall pretty impressive. Again, it's another week where Vance Joseph coaches his butt off as the DC for the Cardinals. That unit looked fantastic in Seattle, and they're part of the reason where the Seattle Seahawks, even with Russell Wilson second week back, only scored 13 points. I continue to be really impressed with what this Arizona defense looks like. I think it's been one of the biggest surprises on the season, and James Conner's been productive, right? He's getting in the end zone a ton, and Colt McCoy did just enough. And the 2 games that he started and finished, they actually won both, so it was not that bad, I guess. But yeah, really impressive. And now Arizona, after the bye, is going to have Kyler, going to have D-Hop, you hope. And wow, this team is sitting pretty. I think they are clear-cut for me right now, the best team in the NFL. But tell me what you think down in the comment section. What do you think these power rankings should look like? Who's too high? Who's too low in my regards? And who's your favorite team? Tell me where you think they fit into the mix. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, want to see more football content like this in your life, hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for today's power rankings. Until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.